The BS Report is a free-flowing conversation that occasionally touches on mature subjects.
First of all,
This is the BS Report with Bill Simmons.
it might be cool, I don't know. And if it's not, I don't care.
The BS Report with Bill Simmons.
Bill Simmons works for ESPN. He's also named the sports guy, and he writes a comical sports column. He must be a popular dude.
The BS Report.
It's got a real dirty sound, like a rusty steak knife cutting through a well-aged steak.
Now.
Here's Bill Simmons.
Welcome to the BS Report. Welcome to Smart Guy Wednesday. Wow. We're starting off Wednesday with a bang. Bill Barnwell coming up later. Right now, creator of FootballOutsiders.com, a staple of our NFL playoffs coverage. He was not available on Monday because he was in the bunker. He was crunching numbers. He just wasn't ready. He wasn't emotionally ready. He wasn't mentally ready. He wasn't statistically ready. Now he's ready. Aaron Schatz, what's happening?
Hey, man, yeah, the day after the season is always, you got to finish everything, you got to get it all up, and then I had to put all of our game charting together finally for the first time this year to get a bunch of things like cornerback numbers and all kinds of stuff that we haven't had yet earlier in the year. So, man, now I'm packed with numbers. I am ready. I am prepared to talk about Wild Card Weekend.
Best team that didn't make the playoffs.
The best team that didn't make the playoffs is probably the Giants.
Oh.
I mean, every Patriots fan in the world breathed a sigh of relief, and every Packers fan. We forget as Patriots fans that on their way to upsetting the Patriots in both 2007 and 2011, the Giants upset the Green Bay Packers in both 2007 and 2011.
Yes.
So the Bears were the best team that didn't make the playoffs by DVOA, but if you consider their injury situation right now, the Giants, who were right behind them, are probably the most dangerous team that didn't make it because the Bears haven't been as good in recent weeks because of injuries.
And the final rankings of DVOA, the Seahawks holding on for the final spot despite a spotty Week 17 effort. Denver second. New Orleans third. San Francisco just missing the 30 mark.
New England third.
Oh, I'm sorry, New England third. San Francisco just missing the 30 mark. You almost had four teams that were 30 and over. Explain what that means.
Which is a lot, okay? Because, and this is the interesting thing about this year. I know when you think about this year's teams, you don't think of these teams as being among the greatest of the last 20 years. I won't say all time because my DVOA stat right now only goes back to 1991. We're hoping to do 1990 and 1989 over this offseason, although we're still looking for – if anybody out there has a tape of Week 16 Rams-Falcons from 1990, I am desperate for that game so that we can finish that year.
Okay.
Anyway, there have only been 22 teams, I believe, that have been over 30% before this year. It's like an average of one a year.
Hold on, let me interrupt you 1 second. Let's explain what this means. So DVOA is this rating you've come up with that takes into account offense, defense, special teams, schedule, right? Schedule's in there?
It compares everything to an average success on a play that's based on down and distance. So it does things like, it discounts your 7-yard gains on 3rd and 12.
Right.
Then it compares that to what the average is for that situation based on the situation, because obviously it's easier to convert 2nd and 1 than it is to convert 2nd and 12, but that doesn't necessarily mean that teams that convert a lot of 2nd and 1s are better on 2nd and 1. It means they're better on 1st down. And then it adjusts it for the opponent so that you end up adjusting for schedule strength.
So if you have an absolutely average year in every respect, you will have a 0.0 DVOA.
That is correct.
And then the worse it gets, you go into the minus. For instance, KC had the worst DVOA this year, minus 40.4%.
Right.
And then Seattle had the best, which was 38.3%. So if anybody's over about 20%, that's a team we should start taking seriously. Only six
right. I mean,
teams
listen,
are above
obviously
20.
over the last few years we've had some of these sort of surprise Super Bowl teams, right? The Cardinals going on that run in 08 and the Giants in 07 and the Giants last year, but in general, yeah, your real Super Bowl contenders should be the teams that are about above 20, and this year that's Seattle, Denver, New England, San Francisco, Green Bay, and just barely Chicago, but they missed the playoffs.
Right.
But here's the thing. I mean, you don't think of these teams as being all-time great teams or even from the last 20 years. But Seattle, Denver, and New England all finished among the top 12 teams that we've ever tracked since 1991. Seattle was 6th, Denver was 8th, and New England was 11th.
Amazing. And you had a good year because both with Denver and Seattle, before those teams took off, your numbers were showing that the record was a little deceiving with those teams, and
right,
indicating they might be good.
And Green Bay when they didn't have the world's greatest record early, and the Patriots when, do you remember when the whole AFC East was 3-3? I mean, I think everybody knew the Patriots were the best of those 4 teams, but our ratings had them far ahead of the other 3 teams in the division.
Yeah, it was a solid year. It was a solid year for you, with one exception. Your engine did not like Chuck Strong.
No, our engine does not like Chuck Strong. The Colts come out as the worst team in DVOA to ever win at least 10 games. Not only are they the worst 11-5 team, they're the worst 10-6 team.
Wow.
They were actually outscored by their opponents over the course of the year. They had the easiest schedule in the league by having a very good game in the last week. By far their best game of the year, by the way, was the win over Houston in Week 17.
Yep.
They escaped having the worst defense of the year. So New Orleans ends up with the worst defense, and the Colts are 31st.
Congratulations, New Orleans.
We have them 18th. Well, the Saints also set a new all-time record for yards given up, breaking the record held by I can't remember if I think it's the 81 Colts, or I can't remember if it's 81 or 83.
It was the 80,
really
80,
awful
81.
Colts teams.
Yep.
One of those really awful early 80s Colts teams. And but the Colts were also, this year, were 18th in offense and 12th in special teams, which is actually like possibly their best special teams ever. But yeah, I mean, they're just nowhere near as good as the other teams in the playoffs. That being said, there are 3 playoff teams that have been worse than this year's Colts, and they all won their first playoff game.
Oh, wow.
The 04 Rams, the Seahawks when they made it in at 7-9, and the 98 Arizona Cardinals all won their first playoff game, and those are the 3 worst playoff teams ever by DVOA. So watch out, Baltimore.
Well, here's the thing, though. Didn't all 3 of those teams play at home, if I remember correctly? Because they won their division with shaky records.
The Cardinals were on the road.
Cardinals was at Dallas that year?
I think that Dallas was technically the division title.
I'll look that up as you keep talking. So the point is, it's not like Chuck Strong, which we knew there was some sort of the emotion of the season, and they were coming through in close games. Like, we knew something cool was happening, but now the stats actually really back that up.
Right.
Like,
now,
this was really fluky.
The fact is, performance in close games, a lot of it is a fluke, and there's a lot of luck involved. A lot of it is just, it's not luck per se, it's you have a really good day that day, and it just so happens that that's not necessarily repeatable. But there is a little bit in there of coaching. For example, Norv Turner teams that are historically horrible in close games.
Yep.
And there is a little bit there, I think, in certain quarterbacks. Peyton Manning's teams do seem to tend to win more close games than others. Tom Brady teams, Eli Manning teams. And so I think you can say that maybe, we don't know if Chuck Strong meant anything. You can't put a number on motivation. As I always say, we call them intangibles because they're intangible. You can't measure them. But if you certainly want to take this and believe that Chuck Strong meant something, I'm not going to fight you on it. What I like to say is that they did this with a lot of luck and a lot of luck, both the proper name luck and just the regular noun.
Yeah, I would say the intangibles definitely mattered. I don't think there's any argument against that. And luck was really good in the fourth quarter of games.
Yeah,
and
that's the reason why that's why he does. He ranks much better in the ESPN total QBR than he does in DVOA because of the clutch index that they use for the high leverage plays.
You were right. 1998 Arizona did win in Dallas. The other 2 were division, just bad division champs, though. Specifically,
no, the 04 Rams were not, though. The 04 Rams also, they won in Seattle.
Really?
Yeah, but that Seattle team wasn't that good either.
I wagered on one of those 2 teams and have some sort of horrible memory of what happened, but I can't remember. I think I did wager on the. Yeah, you're right. Rams 27.
Snake?
No, I think Rams 27, Seahawks 20 at Seattle. So the Rams, Oh, that was the year we had the 8-8 wild cards. Remember that?
Yeah, that was because 2004, the NFC in 2004 was even worse than the AFC was this year.
And that was the year where
that year in our ratings that year, 10 of the top 11 teams were AFC.
And we had a very top-heavy year. That was the year the Pats were 14-2, Steelers were 15-1,
right?
Eagles 13-3, all that stuff. This year felt a little.
Colts were really good that year.
This year was a little top-heavy, right?
Yes, a little bit. I called them the Big Four for most of the year, and then Green Bay has moved up at the end, so it sort of ended up as the Big Five. But there's a big drop from that Big Five. There's a big drop to the Giants with the Bears in between. But like I said, Bears injured at the end. So it really was the Big Five this year.
The last thing on DVOA, and then we'll go to the games. Seattle finished 4th offense, 4th defense, 3rd special teams. Has anyone ever done top 4 in all 3 categories?
I have to check the 91 Redskins. The 91 Redskins are the most balanced team I've ever seen. They were 1st in offense, 3rd in defense, and 1st in special teams.
Whoa!
The 1991 Redskins are in the top 20 of offense, defense, and special teams of the entire history of the stat over 22 years. That's how good that team was. That's the best team we've ever tracked. We should mention they won the Super Bowl. Yeah, when we added 1991, they passed the 2007 Patriots as the best team that DVOA has ever tracked. And a lot of people consider that the best team of all time. We're close to it. When Eddie Epstein wrote a book called Dominance about the best teams of all time, and he ended up with that as his second best team of all time behind the 85 Bears. And I tend to agree with that assessment. The 85 Bears are my pick for the best ever. I can't wait to do that for DVOA. That's going to be awesome.
I was there for both of those teams, and I actually started gambling the year before in 1990, and we rode the Redskins in 91, and they were just money in the bank.
They won their first game by like 50 points
they
over
were great.
Detroit, and then they faced Detroit again in the playoffs and won by like 40.
The other thing with the Redskins, so round 2, they killed the Falcons 24-7. Round 3, they killed the Lions 41-10. Round 4, they killed the Bills 37-24. The game wasn't even that close. Nobody came close to them that year. It was really like a start-to-finish dominant season.
Except Philadelphia that year had the best defense DVOA has ever tracked by leaps and bounds over any other defense of the last 22 years.
Jeez.
But their offense was so putrid after Randall Cunningham got injured in the first game.
Yep.
That they only went 10-6.
I think that was the year. That might have been the year Mark Bowden wrote about when he tracked the Eagles. It was like the year after Jerome Brown died. I can't remember. I can't get all the years straight. But
I think Jerome Brown was still around for that.
Or maybe
team,
he was on that team. But
my God, the quarterbacking situation for that team was so awful.
There was a great book about the Eagles from that era. Yeah, they had Jim McMahon went 8-3 that year. Because Randall was just out. What did he do? He blew out his knee?
He blew out his ACL in the first game of the season.
Ugh.
And they had Jeff Kemp, Brad Goebel, and Jim McMahon.
Great Redskins team. You could talk me into a 30 for 30 about what the hell happened to Mark Rippon that year. Because he went from – it's the equivalent of – I don't even know who the quarterback would be. Like, if Ryan Fitzpatrick was suddenly lights out. Just lights out for an entire year, and every deep pass he threw was right on the money.
Right, and then the next year he held out.
Yep.
And when he came back, he wasn't the same, and he really was never the same.
Last DVOA question. The Vikings, ranking 14th. They are 15th offense, 21st defense, 5th special teams, but that was with Percy Harvin for half of the season, so I'm sure he bumped that up a little bit. As far as I can tell, they are the worst playoff team except for Indy. How are you feeling about Minnesota?
Yeah, I agree. I think that they are. Listen, what Adrian Peterson did this year was amazing, but everybody knows how I feel. Almost always, you win with passing and you win with pass defense more than run and run defense. And so Minnesota, it's hard to win with a great running back, as amazing as he was. And, the fact is, as good as he was, our stats, he was the best running back this year. He's better than that when you consider the fact that what you can't have in stats, which is that he had a terrible quarterback and the teams threw 8 and 9 guys in the box as much as possible, and he busted through all of that, which is just a remarkable season.
851 yards in 1 month might not ever be broken. I mean, you'd also need luck with having 5 games in the month, but holy mackerel.
Especially
851
because
yards in December.
doing it now, when most teams have gone to more of a running back by committee,
Yeah.
right? 800. I can see that being broken, but I can see it being broken by a team that uses multiple running backs, not by a team that uses one.
Let's go with that game first. Minnesota at Green Bay, rematch. Green Bay right now, the line is Green Bay by 7.5. And you just pointed out pass defense, a problem. Passing, also a problem for them. 2 things you need in the playoffs. Talk me into Minnesota.
Yeah, I mean, the talking into Minnesota is the question of whether Minnesota just in particular lines up well with Green Bay, right? Because the first game that was in Green Bay was close, and the second game Minnesota beats them. And Green Bay is not very strong against the run. They are very good against the run in a short yardage situations, but otherwise they haven't been very good against the run, and so of course now they're going to go up against lots and lots of Adrian Peterson. On the other hand, the fact is Minnesota doesn't have a very good pass defense. Their best cornerback is Antoine Winfield, who is not going to be able to play. Right, he broke his something in the last week. Green Bay's biggest weakness on defense is that they've been awful this year against whoever their opponent's best receiver is. Who's Minnesota's best receiver? Who's the guy who you would want to, if you know that Green Bay struggles against the opponent's top receiver? And I'm not talking here about a specific corner, and I'm not talking here about a left-right thing. I'm talking about sort of the way they scheme. Great. Who's going to pick on them for Minnesota? Michael Jenkins? I mean, they're not a team that can really pick on that weakness. And with, Ponder just not having a very good year, and particularly the second half of the year, I mean, I think Green Bay is definitely the favorite. I could see Minnesota winning, certainly, given the matchups and Adrian Peterson's ability to just kind of will himself to 190 yards, but I mean, I do think Green Bay is the better team.
And Minnesota can't fall from behind, which is a huge part of this. If they're down 10 in the fourth quarter, they're in a ton of trouble.
Because they have to still go with Adrian Peterson, and as great as he is, that's going to keep munching time off the clock. Do remember, though, they have a really good kicker, and Green Bay's is terrible. So if this thing comes down to a field goal, it's overtime.
Right. Their recipe is the front four really bothers Rodgers the whole game. They get a nice field goal swing where their guy makes a long one. Crosby misses a chippy. Maybe they get one special teams play. Peterson, maybe he breaks one, and they head into the fourth quarter, and it's like 17-14.
Right. It's just hard to see how, as long as Rodgers has a little bit of time to throw, it's hard to see where Minnesota covers everybody, especially without Winfield. I mean, A.J. Jefferson was so desperate to interfere on every single pass.
Right.
At the end of that game, he was practically in guys' uniforms.
Well, also you have Minnesota outdoors, which, they probably played 10 or 11 of their 16 games indoors this season. So that's always something to look at, too. Yeah, it's Green Bay. It's a question of, for me, whether they cover the 7.5. It has serious blowout potential. Rodgers, I think, has had an excellent season because he's just had banged up receivers. His line stinks. They've had 5 different running backs.
Oh yeah.
And it seems like this is the best shape they've been in probably since the beginning part of the season. I could see them.
Yeah, they have all the
40.
receivers back now.
Yeah. So, all right, other games. Seattle, Washington. This is going
to be fun.
Really big DVOA mismatch here. Seattle's
I know,
38.
but I'm so excited to see each team have to face its own offense.
Yeah.
These are both teams that are going to run a lot of read option, pistol stuff. Neither team is really has particularly wide receiver, like one wide receiver who stands out. They sort of spread the wealth around as far as the receiving goes. Both teams have running backs who may not be the fastest guys in the league, but are more of a tackle-breaking type running backs. They're really facing each other on offense. The problem is they're not on defense, and that's the difference. Okay, the difference in this game has nothing to do. God, when Seattle wins this game, which I do think they're going to, we're going to hear all about Russell Wilson, Robert Griffin. You know what this has to do with? Richard Sherman and Brandon Browner kick D'Angelo Hall's butt up and down the field when it comes to who's the better cornerback. Okay, so I ran my first version of our cornerback charting stats, and we haven't game charted the entire season yet, but we've got about 85% of it, okay? D'Angelo Hall, last place in the league for starting cornerbacks with a 41% success rate, gave up over 10 yards per play in coverage. He's like this every year. D'Angelo Hall is a great example of the whole money ball, we're not selling jeans here philosophy. He's a fabulous athlete. He's very fast. He's great returning interceptions. He picks the ball off a little bit. But he can't cover as well as other guys in the league. Just can't do it.
And he had a good game on Sunday, too, but it seems like Dez might have been hurt in that game.
I think it was overstating. I think they were overstating how well he was playing. I think the Redskins' pass rush was getting to Romo so he couldn't find Bryant. But, I mean, Seattle has two of the best cornerbacks in the league.
Yep.
And Washington has Josh Wilson, who's like average, and then they have D'Angelo, who's just not good.
And Washington had to do, they were blitzing every down, and Dallas, for whatever reason, just couldn't figure out what to do against it. I think Seattle is going to have a much easier time.
Now, I will say this, and this information, I should say, comes courtesy of ESPN Stats and Info, since some of our charting this year, we actually got their data so that we could not have to work quite so hard. Seattle was the worst offense in the league when the opposing defense blitzed a defensive back. And Washington does that a lot.
They do that a lot.
And Washington was the best offense in the league when the opposing defense blitzed a defensive back. And Griffin led all quarterbacks with 8.8 yards per play, including sacks and scrambles, when the other team sent more than 4 pass rushers.
He's not moving the same as he was, though. That's the only thing with Griffin.
And Seattle's not 60%. Going to do that. Seattle doesn't blitz much. Seattle does it with 4. So he can't take advantage of that. But it is interesting to note that Wilson, for all of his mobility, Wilson was much better against the standard pass rush than he was against the blitz, and he really struggled when the team blitzed defensive back. So Washington could get to him here with pressure.
Last thing to mention on this game. This is something we talk about every year on the podcast when we talk to you. And it always seems to be borne out every time. Seattle, third best special teams. Leon Washington has, even when he's not breaking a touchdown, he'll still have like the 35-yarder.
Right, which is the thing that people don't think much about are the long returns that aren't touchdowns.
That set you, either they get you to midfield or they get the punt return where all of a sudden you're on the other team's 25. Like, he'll do that pretty consistently every other game. And then on the flip side, you have Washington, 27th special teams. They had the tight end returning kicks because Brandon Banks is out. That could be a 10-point swing potentially. For
although I will point out that Washington is much better returning kickoffs, and Leon Washington is much better returning kickoffs. But Washington, the team, their weakness is punting more than it is kick coverage. So the weakness and the strength don't quite line up. So I think it's more likely that Seattle gets an advantage here with a lot of little advantages than with like one big play. But yeah, it is an advantage for Seattle.
Other side, Baltimore, Indianapolis, Chuck Strong, now being negated potentially by Ray Lewis retiring after the season. It's like he tried to chump Chuck Strong. Right. It also he's done after the year. So there will be emotion on the Baltimore side as well. Not that there wouldn't have been anyway, but how do you feel about the way Baltimore finished the season?
Nah. I mean, it didn't excite anybody to a great extent, but they were still winning games. They beat some teams, and they beat the Giants like a drum. The thing about Baltimore that stands out is that they are essentially an average team with great special teams. They had one of the top special teams we've ever measured, and that overcame the fact that they're essentially average on offense and defense.
The one thing that jumps out with me is if you give them a bad secondary to go against, whether it was the Pats or whether it was that banged up Giants or whatever, their team kind of falls into place because then Flacco can start finding guys, then that opens up Ray Rice. Indy's secondary Indy's whole defense isn't great. Like, it
Bad.
does seem like it's a nice matchup for them.
Very
like
bad.
And
yeah,
then
yeah. Also, Indy is the worst defense in the league at giving up long runs.
Yeah.
So, if Rice breaks into the open field, then it's happy time for him. I mean, yeah, I could see Torrey Smith having a big game here. They're not going to be able to cover him. It's just not a good defense.
Then you have Colts outdoors. Dome team playing on the road. Dome team playing against a team that's been really good at home.
Listen, it all comes down to looking at who they've beaten this year, other than Houston. That last game, that was fabulous, right? Okay. But most of the time this year, they were winning games by less than a touchdown against Buffalo and Jacksonville and Detroit and Tennessee and Cleveland, and they got destroyed by the Jets, which is just, looking back at it, is unbelievable. This team lost by like 25 points to the Jets.
They also got destroyed by the Bears.
Well, that's a little bit more believable.
Well, they got annihilated by the Pats. And, when you look at that, the best win they had was Houston in Week 17. I thought that was the best game I'd seen them play.
Oh, by far, it's their best game of the year.
Nice matchup for them, though. Houston kind of free-falling. You can throw on Houston.
They really only have one dangerous receiver.
Yeah, got a special teams play. Like, everything kind of went right for them that game. And I don't love Baltimore at all, but I think it's a lot to ask for this. Put it this way, I think Indianapolis' Super Bowl is getting into the playoffs. And we are now in the everything else is gravy stage of almost
again, because Baltimore is really essentially average except on special teams. And I would not be completely shocked for Indy to win the way I would if they were to win in Houston again. Not again. I mean, the first time they played in Houston, they lost. The win was at home. But listen, it's probably all just random chance that the worst DVOA teams to ever make the playoffs all won. But there's a little voice in the back of my head that goes, "See, Indy's going to win too." And then, like all of those teams, it's going to get slaughtered in the second round.
Yep. It could be this year's Broncos.
Yeah.
Same thing.
Yeah.
And you look at like this Ravens team.
That's what happened to the Rams in 2004. That's what happened to the Cardinals in 98. Close win in the first round, got slaughtered in the second round.
Well, this Ravens team is a little similar to last year's Steelers team, where it's their more reputation than anything else.
Oh, the defense is totally on reputation. The defense is not good. It's not bad, but it's not good.
Listen, I know all the reasons I should take Baltimore. I can't imagine I will go against Chuck Strong. I know I'm going to end up talking myself into the plus 7.5 and just hoping either for an upset
the 7.5 lines are really designed to entice you into the underdog, aren't they?
Yeah. Well, or is it 6.5? What is it? 6.5 or 7.5? I can't remember. There's three 6.5, 7.5. But, you could beat Baltimore potentially because they're average on both sides of the ball, and luck could get hot, and they could get a big play, and I could see the case for it. Also, now that Fleener's back and Hilton's has emerged as like a half-decent big play guy, their offense isn't terrible, the Colts. I think they can move the ball.
The problem is their defense is terrible.
But I'm saying, even if they were down 17 in the fourth quarter, I feel like they could, maybe get the 10 cheap garbage time points for the
something
late
about
cover,
luck
something
makes you feel like they could do it. I mean, listen, from a mathematical perspective, there's no doubt Baltimore is the very strong favorite.
Yeah.
I've got the little voice in the back of my head saying Andrew Luck and Chuck Strong too.
So last game, most interesting from a statistical standpoint and everything. Like Houston, talk about reputation. Houston's giving 4.5 at home to Cincy. They've looked like crap for a month. Cincy, I don't think is a juggernaut, but they've been playing pretty well. In DVOA, Houston is 11, Cincy is 12. Yet the line is 4.5. Why is this line 3
the other
points?
is the direction. This is a great example of direction. Now, listen, I tend to say that the idea of momentum going into the playoffs is very overrated because when most people think of momentum going into the playoffs, they're thinking three or four games. When we look at momentum with the weighted DVOA, we're looking at 12 games. Not the full season, but we're still looking at 8 games of full strength and then another 4 of declining strength. But the fact is, if you look over that long period, so not just the last couple of weeks, but the long period, Cincinnati goes from 12th to 7th, and Houston goes from 11th to 19th. So this is a great example of does playing better in the second half of the season. Not just December. I mean, the whole last 9 or 10 weeks makes Cincinnati a much better team than Houston, because it's certainly, if you look only at the last 9 or 10 weeks, Cincinnati is the much better team. Houston is, both of their starting inside linebackers are now hurt. They're pulling guys off the street to play inside linebacker. Rivers McCown, who's my assistant editor, who lives in Houston and is a Texans fan, he says that other than J.J. Watt being Defensive Player of the Year and Kareem Jenkins having a much better Kareem Jackson having a much better second season than he did his first, and Glover Quinn playing well, the rest of the Houston defense has been worse this year than they were last year. And the defense is not as good as people think, except for J.J. Watt, because he's been so incredible. And they're pulling guys off the street to play inside linebacker right now. And on the other hand, though, Cincinnati's defense is better than people think, and they have a defensive lineman who's, not quite what Watt's been this year, but amazing, which is Geno Atkins.
He's J.J. Watt without
They've got a much better pass rush than Houston does, outside of just their number one guy.
He's J.J. Watt with bad PR, Geno Atkins.
Yeah, well, J.J. Watt,
I know he's better.
We have a stat called defeats. One stat doesn't prove everything, but this stat called defeats, what it does is it combines turnovers, tackles for a loss, and passes that prevent a conversion, plays that could prevent a conversion on third or fourth down. Going into this year, we had this number going back to 1996. Going into this year, the record was 45. The record for a defensive by Ray Lewis, and the record for a defensive lineman was 37 by Robert Porcher in 1997 for the Lions. Okay, J.J. Watt had 56.
Oh.
He blew away the previous defensive lineman record by 19 and the overall record by 11. Now, again, this is not the ultimate end-all, be-all stat. Defensive tackles aren't going to get as many of these. Cornerbacks who provide good coverage are not going to do well in this, because what makes them so good is the plays they don't have to make because no one throws there. But still, he took this record and just obliterated it. J.J. Watt this year was phenomenal. Geno Atkins was really good, and so was Von Miller. But J.J. Watt is like on another planet.
He's your clear Defensive Player of the Year. Yeah, so Cincinnati, their biggest weakness, or one of their biggest weaknesses, is they can't really block for Dalton. I think they were like 6 with sacks allowed. That's not good for them in this matchup.
No, though Houston's pass rush is not as good as people think, other than Watt. But yeah, you got to stick 2 or 3 guys on him. Cincinnati was 28th in adjusted sack rate. So yeah, they're not that good at protection. Ben Jarvis Green Ellis doesn't scare anybody, right? Let's be honest about that.
Yep.
And here's an interesting thing about Houston's defense. They were 4th against the opponent's number 1 receiver and 28th against the number 2. But Cincinnati is a team that depends so highly on one receiver. And it's really a question, who's going to be covering A.J. Green? Will it be a mixture? Will it mostly be Jackson? Will it mostly be Joseph? Because Joseph is still not healthy. He hasn't really been healthy all year.
Nope.
So Jackson's actually been the better corner this year by our numbers and by the sight test. Jackson's been the better corner this year than a gimpy Jonathan Joseph. Who's covering A.J. Green? And if they do cover A.J. Green really well, the way they have generally done against the opponent's best receiver, will Marvin Jones and Andrew Hawkins, step up and take advantage of, the fact that they've had to go to depth guys when it comes to nickel backs and dime backs and so on.
Cincy's 7th special teams, Houston 32nd.
Yep, Houston worst special teams in the league this year. And like you said, Indy, what they do to beat them in the last week, one of the things, big special teams play.
That makes me nervous. I hate taking a favorite when you just always see the special teams play.
Oh, I think Cincinnati is such an obvious choice here against the spread.
Yeah.
You want to say Houston straight up? I think it's 50-50 maybe, but against the spread, Cincinnati, is it 4.5 still? That's just absolutely Cincinnati.
The line should be 3. I think these teams are dead even. And if Houston wins a game, it's going to have to be because they harassed Dalton and because they ran the ball down Cincy's throat.
Right, and that they doubled A.J. Green the whole game.
And took out A.J. Green and did the whole thing. But yeah, I think I
mean,
don't know if
this is the
Cincy's
kind
going to win.
You play the box and one defense. You should play the box and one defense against them, like they did against Steve Smith in the playoffs a few years ago, like teams were doing against Calvin Johnson at times, where you play a zone plus one man who just covers him, so that he's always being covered by one guy plus whichever zone he's in.
I believe in A.J. Green, and I know he's going to get open in this game at least once, and the question will be whether Dalton can hit him. But A.J. Green's really good. And
well, he also makes
once.
plays when he also makes plays when he doesn't get open. He's
Right.
one of those guys too, like Calvin Johnson, like Brandon Lloyd.
Wait, Brandon Lloyd never gets open. What are you talking about? He hasn't been open in 17 weeks.
Right, that's Brandon Lloyd's
Yeah,
thing. Brandon
his
Lloyd
thing.
is a good receiver because of the plays he makes when he's not open, not because he can get open. If he could get open, he'd be Calvin Johnson.
He never get open. My dad, he drives him crazy. He texts me every week like, "Is this guy? Has he been open once to say something?" No, that's part of Brandon Lloyd. It's the degree of difficulty for him.
No, there are amazing highlight reels on the web. Matt Waldman, who writes college scouting for us, linked on his own site, which is mattwaldmanrsp.com. People should definitely check that out. But he linked to some of these Brandon Lloyd highlight reels where you just show him making these ridiculous twisting, I can't believe he kept his feet in bounds catches. What you do not see many of is where he makes a double move and he's 10 yards past the cornerback, like you see with A.J. Green and Calvin Johnson.
Yeah. I actually think Brady enjoys it. I think he likes the degree of difficulty of trying to throw these 15-yard outs where the guy is basically on Brandon Lloyd's back and see if he can catch it. But, all right, so your favorite pick, it sounds like, is Cincinnati plus 4.5.
Yes.
Okay. I think I agree with you. I just think that line should be 3, and actually I think that line will move to 3.5 would be my prediction.
And if you would ask me if I have to pick winners and losers of these games, what's the most likely? I think Cincinnati and Washington win on the road. Cincinnati and Seattle win on the road, and then Baltimore and Green Bay win at home.
Well, I never like when we agree. That's never a good sign. So I'm gonna have to switch my pick on the Colts, I think. Chuck Strong. Can't fight it.
It is hard to fight. It is hard to fight. And if Chuck Strong happens, then you really want Houston to win because you want to see the Colts play Manning.
Well,
I'm talking about it as a general fan, not as a Patriot. As a Patriots fan, you'd like to see Houston again because the Patriots think they can beat them. But also, just as a general NFL fan, you do not want to see Cincinnati play Denver. You want to see Indianapolis play Denver if Indianapolis wins.
Well, as a Patriots fan, I want to see Houston in round 2. Baltimore, even though, as we covered, average on both ends, good special teams, but a team that
feel
thinks
like
they
they
can
match
beat New
up well
England.
with the Patriots, right?
Yeah, a team that will go into that game thinking they can.
But
win
also
it.
from a story perspective, if Indy wins, right? If Indy wins, as Patriots fans, you're thinking, "Oh man, send Cincy to Denver and give us Indy." But from a story perspective, oh man, you want to see Indy play Manning. You want to see Peyton Manning play Indianapolis. That's what we would all love to see in the second round. That would just be an amazing story.
Yeah, I'm looking at it from an ESP standpoint. I just have this weird feeling we're going to play Baltimore, especially now that Lewis is out. So how many battles did the Pats have with Baltimore over the years? It just seems like they have to have one.
Oh, I agree I agree, but that would have to mean Cincinnati wins,
which we think they can.
Which I definitely think that they are definitely been the better team over the last 2 years.
Yeah, I can see that. Aaron Schatz, we will check you out on FootballOutsiders.com. We'll talk to you next week on the BS Report. Thanks for your time.
Sounds good, man. Enjoy the games.
Talk to you, buddy. All right, let's bring it on over. Smart Guy Wednesday, our lead NFL guy, who's been out of his mind this year. I think it's been right on par with Russell Wilson's last 2 months. Bill Barnwell, what's happening?
I am equally as tall as Russell Wilson as well, so it's a great comparison, I think.
You had, well, let's face it. You started out slow with the preseason. You were really adamant about San Francisco not being a playoff team.
Mm-hmm. No, that's not true. I said San Francisco would win the NFC West, but they would be 9-7.
You went under, right?
I went under for sure.
You were very dubious of Peyton Manning in Denver.
That's true.
But then, as the season went along, you locked in.
I did.
You were almost like I would compare you to Peyton Manning's Broncos.
That's a great compliment. 'Cause I think Peyton Manning's Broncos are the best team in the NFL right now. So I'm happy
They're the best team in the NFL.
I'm happy to take that compliment.
in your defense, I also thought that Denver was going to be a disaster, and I am amazed that Peyton Manning is doing this, and I just didn't think it was possible. I just, after the 4th neck surgery, I didn't think there was any conceivable way that he would be able to play at the level that he's not at his 2006 level, but I didn't think he'd be able to reach the 2009 level. And he's clearly there. And plus, how does Brandon Stokely stay healthy? How does Demaryius Thomas turn into this weapon? How are they doing this without running backs? McGahee got hurt halfway through the season. Hasn't stopped them for some reason. Do you think they are the best team?
I do. I think that, I was on the Texans a few weeks ago. Obviously, they've spun pretty miserably over the past few weeks, and I have my doubts about them. But, the Broncos obviously have a great pass rush, underrated run defense. Good, obviously very good passing attack. They can run the ball reasonably well. I don't think they're going to be, bowling over teams with their running game, but I think they can mix it up just enough that teams have to respect that, and you can, get Thomas downfield past the safeties. I think the biggest thing with the Broncos was, the numbers said, hey, they're going to regress. And even when I wrote that article, I put it at the bottom and I said, okay, well, I wouldn't believe the numbers if it weren't for the fact that their schedule is really tough. And as it turned out, their schedule wasn't that tough. After the first few games, after those Texans games and the Falcons game, they had a pretty easy schedule for the second half of the year. So, I think that's where that prediction went wrong. Certainly the schedule was not the way I thought it would be.
I'm glad you brought this up because I think we worry too much about the schedule before the season. There's too much uncertainty, and it's you can look at somebody's schedule. I think in the case of the Giants, it was clear that they had a monster, terrible schedule. But even them, they got to play Philly twice,
Sure.
They got to play a really mediocre Dallas team twice. They had some other tough ones, but, I do think it's tough to figure out who's we knew the AFC South wasn't going to be very good, right? And that's that's why I picked the Colts to go 9-7 and get the wild card. And it was mainly because they were in that horrible, horrible, horrible division. But
I thought you were just slipping in the by the way, I picked the Colts to make the playoffs.
I also picked the Bills and the Raiders to make the playoffs.
I picked the Bills too. I don't know why I was so on board with Ryan Fitzpatrick in hindsight. I don't know what I was thinking there.
Well, we knew somebody. It turned out to be the Bengals, right?
Right.
And neither of us believed in Denver, so you had to pick somebody in that division. I wish I had talked to myself. I really thought Manning. I just thought he was going to be out of football by week 7. But the Colts were the one. This is something to remember going forward. I think they went from Orlovsky and Painter to Andrew Luck. And I'm sure there's some way for us to figure out how many wins that's worth, but it's got to be worth at least 5. And then you throw in all the other stuff that happened.
The concept you hear about with analytics is replacement level, and I think that's sort of a vague term because you can envision what average looks like. You can look at, say, Joe Flacco and say, okay, that's an average starting quarterback. But replacement level is tougher because it's hard to envision a quarterback coming off the street and playing at that level and how much better it is to have even an average quarterback the next year.
Right.
We're talking about going from the 60th or 61st best quarterback in football, which maybe Curtis Painter was, to, I don't know, would you put Luck in the mid-teens this year maybe? Just on his performance for this year alone? That's, that is an enormous upgrade. That's probably a 4 or 5 win upgrade on its own.
So it's something to watch out for with Arizona next year, I think.
Depends on who Arizona gets.
Right. If they're able to get somebody good.
Yeah, I'm afraid they're going to try to get another year out of Kevin Cobb and bring in Andy Reid with the idea of fixing Kevin Cobb, which I don't think it's going to work with that offensive line. I think the problem is, he is so afraid of the pass rush that there's just not going to be any improvement until he has a healthy line in front of him. By then, it's really not going to be worth it. I'm
going to defend Kevin Cobb for a second.
Oh, boy.
I thought he had some moments this year. He just got hurt.
Well, here's the thing. I was just reading the Arizona defensive coordinator's press conference. He was talking about how Kevin Cobb was 4-0 this season before everyone got hurt. He got hurt and he missed the rest of the year. And that's a total misnomer because he came in for 1 or 2 drives in week 1 against the Seahawks and won.
Came
so
through.
With that
Huge
one.
drives.
Yeah, sure. Those 2 nice drives, I agree with you. But then weeks 2, 3, 4, he wins. At that point, you say maybe he's 4-0. Then week 5, he puts up a total stinker against the Rams. He's getting hit all the time, but I think they scored 7 points the entire game. Week 6, he's in for 3.5 quarters, and they lose that game. So you can't count week 1 where he had 2 drives and not count week 5 and week 6 where he was, where he started and played most of the game. So, he was good, but I think we're forgetting just how mediocre he was, how inefficient that offense was, even with Cobb in there.
Well, he was terrible in the Patriots game. I think he put together like one decent drive and had a lot of luck with tip passes and stuff like that. And the reason I mention that is because me and my Pats friends, when we email about this stuff, the Arizona game could end up costing them the Super Bowl, because that was the dumbest loss of the season. They never should have lost that game. They even had a chance to win the final minute. Really, really dubious call on Gronkowski that nobody has still figured out what the penalty was. Then they got skittish, ended up, playing for a field goal basically, which you hate and I hate. They lose the game, and now they have to go to Denver if they want to make the Super Bowl. That game cost them home field advantage throughout the playoffs. Anyway, that's a good segue actually to the AFC. So Cincinnati versus Houston. A lot of buzz on Cincinnati. Hard to make the case for Houston. Is Houston now the nobody believes in us team? Huh?
Right. It feels like Cincinnati is like too hot of an underdog right now. Where I think too many people jumped on that bandwagon after the past couple of weeks. And I thought the Bengals were a very solid team for most of the year. I thought they were extremely underrated, up to the final 2 games of the year. And I think they didn't play that well against Pittsburgh.
No.
And last week against Baltimore, the Ravens had their backups in from the beginning of the game, pretty much all together on both sides of the ball. I think Flacco and Rice got 2 drives. And the Bengals had their first team offense out there for at least most, if not all, of the first half. And they couldn't move the ball on the Baltimore backups, which that's scary. If you're playing for, you're playing, with really nothing to play for, but you're playing against your division rivals' backups, and you can't, you're going 3 and out multiple occasions, that's just not a playoff team to me.
But then you look at Houston's last 4 weeks, and especially that Colts game when the Colts had nothing to play for other than Chuck Strong, and Houston was actually playing for a 2 seed, and they look miserable. Matt Schaub looks miserable. He looks terrible. What happened to Matt Schaub? I wouldn't be surprised if he's got torn triceps or something. That's how bad he's been.
But even if Matt Schaub is that bad, wouldn't you still rather have Matt Schaub than TJ Yates?
Oh, yeah. That's the thing. It's like dating back to that Pats game, which you and I tweeted on Grantland Live. And remember how bad he was in that game? And both of us were like, and then it's like, was this an aberration or what do we learn from this? And he hasn't been the same since that game. And as far as I know, he's not as far as I know, he's not injured.
Right. He doesn't have the Matthew Stafford double secret shoulder injury that is causing him to throw a sidearm. So I don't think he's injured. They ended up playing a pretty tough schedule over the final 4 weeks, though. The Colts. Yeah. I'm down in the Colts, but are at very least an average team, maybe a little better than average. And Patriots and Vikings are not anyone to mess with. The Vikings have played pretty well the final few weeks of the year. They ran into the Prometheus level juggernaut that's Adrian Peterson. So I kind of think they got up to 11-1. And they kind of coasted the rest of the way, and they kind of said, okay, well, we'll just rescue it. We'll win at week 17, and we'll take care of business. And they didn't. They had a really flat game against the Colts. So I think they're a little undervalued at this point. I'd rather look at what they did over the first 13 games of the year, 12 games of the year, and say, okay, this is at least going to come back a little bit.
And you are not a momentum believer.
No. I think you put more stock into what happens over the final few games of the year than I do. And I think the team that, at least in my head, I'm focusing on when I think about the Texans are the Super Bowl year Saints, who started 13-0, lost to the Cowboys on Saturday night, and then pretty much tanked the rest of the way, finished 13-3, and they came back in the playoffs and were great. So, it can happen. Certainly, you don't want to play terrible football, but I don't think it matters as much as people think.
Yeah, all right, here's my counter.
Okay.
So, first of all, I don't like having a cold quarterback. Right. Breeze, even though New Orleans finished that year badly, it was still Breeze. You knew who he was. You knew what he was going to do. Schaub makes me really nervous now, and I don't know what's wrong with him. So that would be one thing. Also, we've been talking about it all year, Arian Foster, and just how they kind of ran him into the ground. I wonder if we're already seeing the effects of that as we head into the season, head into the playoffs. Then you have, they've had injuries on defense. It's not the same defense that it was in September.
Mm-hmm.
And
I'm going to take the flip side of that, though. I think Arian Foster's been pretty rested the past couple of weeks. He had the irregular heartbeat in week 16, I think, where he missed a good half of the game. And then they didn't use him that much last week. So hopefully he kind of got that last little respite the past 2 weeks to hopefully be ready for the playoffs. So
you're thinking a refreshed Arian Foster?
We're gonna find out this weekend. I think it depends on how he plays. I think he'll end up proving one or the other. So I feel like they have Ben Tate back. They're generally going to use Ben Tate in some sort of role. They're not going to be entirely reliant on Foster. And I feel like they're a team that's just been saving themselves for the playoffs one way or another, and they sort of overstruck their target when it came to resting.
I like that nobody believes in his part. I love the fact that Marvin Lewis is involved. You can't sleep on that part. And then they're home in a dome.
Right.
And Andy Dalton, kind of
right. I mean, I had the Bengals last year in Houston, and it wasn't close. They got outplayed the entire game, and that was with T.J. Yates.
Yeah.
And that wasn't with, super freak J.J. Watt that's been around this year. So I really think that they're the better team, and I think people are being a little too focused on the past 2 weeks when it comes to handicapping this. I was really shocked that it opened. I think it opened at 3 before going to 4.5, which just seemed crazy to me.
Baltimore at Indy. Is there any rational way to look at this game?
It's just a swirling ball of emotions that numbers can't handicap whatsoever. Let me ask you this. Now, I think if you put all 12 teams in the playoffs and you had to rank them from 12 to 1, Indy and Baltimore would be the 2 worst teams in the playoffs.
Indy would be the worst.
Right.
You're removing emotion on that. You could talk me into Minnesota being a 3-headed monster there, just because of the Ponder factor.
Ponder is pretty bad, huh?
But they look really good. Hey, Schatz was saying like Baltimore just on both sides of the ball, just average, and then they have a terrible special teams.
Right.
So
you'd say average. Well, they have a good kicker. I think their kicker's pretty sound. But average is a nice way of putting it. And that was before, with some sort of a season where they were healthy. I mean, they're down to, Lewis might play this weekend, but he's not anywhere near 100%. Suggs is not anywhere near 100%. Nott has been a shell of himself for most of the year. Secondary's beat up. I mean, they're running on fumes at this point. I just don't feel like they have a lot left.
It does seem like this is a good candidate for the over, this Baltimore Indy game. Because I think Baltimore's going to be able to move the ball in Indy. And Flacco does have a lot of success against bad defenses. That's the one time you kind of feel good about Joe Flacco, especially bad secondary. I could see him moving the ball. I could see Luck moving the ball. I like Indy's offense. I think they have weapons. They can't block. Really huh? I was saying they can't block, but they have Hilton's been pretty good. Their tight ends are pretty good. Reggie Wayne. That Ballard's not terrible. Luck can do stuff. Luck's very Roethlisberger-y from time to time.
Is that really a compliment? You want to throw Andrew Luck's away? I don't feel like he deserves better than that. Maybe
I meant the thing that we like about Roethlisberger, how he's able to. You think he's going to get sacked and he doesn't. I think he's still the best at that. Like, how did they not get him? I think Luck has a little of that. Especially last week, I thought he really navigated that game nicely.
Yeah, there was one play in the first drive where he just every single it looked like a screen pass that wasn't a screen pass, and he just stepped up and ran past 3 Texans, completed the pass, and I just thought, oh my God, but Texans were the wrong side today from that point forward.
I'd like to see this game settle in the 7 to 7.5 range, so I can feel comfortable taking Chuck Strong. Because at least then you get garbage time TD potential.
That's big teaser potential there at 7.5.
Huge teaser potential. Sal and I talked about it on Monday a little bit. There's you do Packers, Ravens, and you're feeling pretty good about going against Christian Ponder giving less than a field goal.
Mm-hmm. That's the smart guy teaser.
And Minnesota, Green Bay. How you feeling about the Packers?
Before the season, my pick for the Super Bowl was Packers-Texans. And I am not inclined to think otherwise. I really feel like Green Bay is another team where they have been resting their guys for the postseason. They have brought back Clay Matthews and given him some limited snaps. They've kept Charles Woodson out. I I think they're so deep at cornerback. They match up well with so many teams in football. But the one matchup they really seem to have problems with is Minnesota. The run defense is not great. They don't really have a good cover tight, a good guy to cover tight ends. Maybe Woodson will be that guy if he plays, but Rudolph seems to play well against them. And I mean, just like everyone else, I'm terrified of Adrian Peterson. I don't know what's going to happen. Like honestly, he could run for 300 yards, this weekend, and I wouldn't be that surprised. It's that crazy of a situation. I just can't put a cap on what I expect from him.
He had some of the greatest 8-yard runs I've ever seen in my life on Sunday.
Right.
There's just 4 guys near him and no daylight at all, and then all of a sudden it's 2nd and 2, and you're like, what just happened? How did he get 8 yards? I don't understand.
I really think part of it was Robert Mays rooting for the Packers and abandoning his beloved Bears. It really upset me just as a friend of Robert Mays. But
it's going to be a really, really dark year for him.
It really is.
He started out, or actually he finished 2012 really going to the dark side about as badly as, and plus doing it in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
He was there in Chicago with other Bears fans rooting for the Packers. I don't know what the solution is there, but maybe, obviously you had to root for him, but God, you just have to take a shower after.
You have to burn your clothes. Which
he did, I think. I think he burned his clothes. But yeah, I'm a little worried about Mays' psyche, especially this Derrick Rose thing now is just hanging over Chicago's head. Mm-hmm. Let's go to the most intriguing game, the best game in terms of arguing one side or the other, Seattle versus Washington. Seems like people have very strong opinions one way or the other on this game.
I am actually going to be contrarian. I feel like I don't really have a good grasp on it yet. I really want to go back and watch some more tape before I have a strong opinion on it. Right now, I feel like, Seattle, first of all, I feel like the under is a really strong play here. I feel like it's just not going to be a high-scoring game. The Redskins' offense is, very good running the ball, has not been all that great passing the ball at times over the past few weeks, but Seattle's defense is very sound. I feel like they're not going to give up the big plays that other teams have against the Redskins. And I feel like Seattle's just not the same offense on the road. I feel like they're a much better team at home, which the numbers bear that out, and especially on the offensive side of the ball. So I'm kind of skeptical.
You're skeptical of the Seahawks? Wow.
Well,
I've heard this argument.
Wilson. Yeah, they're the numbers bear it out. They're a much better team at home than they are on the road. They're not a bad team on the road, but they're not a fantastic football team on the road the way they are at home.
What do you make of the fact that they did not play a bad game this entire season? Even the games they lost, they were in the game until the final 3 minutes. I can't remember that happening.
Until about week 14 when they got blown out by the Saints. You could have also said that about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And the Buccaneers aren't making the playoffs, and they aren't really close to it.
Did we ever figure out what happened to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers?
They lost.
Was there a team Ebola virus? What happened to that team?
They were going to build around their running game, and they had 2 Pro Bowl guards, and one of them went down for the season in August, and one of them went down for the season, I believe, in the middle of October. So when you lose your 2 best offensive linemen and you're a run-based team, you're going to be in trouble. And also, Josh Freeman, I think, might have had a lobotomy or something after about week 13 because he just was not the same player.
Yeah, he went off the deep end. He fell off a cliff, and it was really one of the stranger things that's happened this season. Nobody cares because it's Tampa Bay, but that was a team. I wrote my QB power poll. I think I had him 10th. I was like, this guy's emerged. This guy's a legit guy. And from that point on, the last 5 weeks, he just completely fell apart. I don't get it. I think you and I both had them for the playoffs, so that hurt.
Mm-hmm.
That's
they're really underrated.
Extra. Yeah, that's
you know what? I'll be high on them next year. I'll be high on them in Carolina next year. I think they're both underrated teams. But, with Seattle, definitely you want to be playing close games, and they were dominant the final few weeks, which is, you want to be a dominant team. I think historically, the numbers say that teams that blow out, pretenders tend to do better in the playoffs than teams that, squeak out close wins, like the Colts, for example. But I think the crowd's going to be a big factor. I think, Washington really gets behind teams when they play well.
Yeah.
In a way that I think every city does that, but I think Washington might be the best city in the country for that. And I think it's going to be a pretty imposing crowd. I think Russell Wilson will play well, but I just wonder. I just feel like I feel more confident in it being a low-scoring game than figuring out who's going to actually win one way or another.
Where does the part where we're sending you to the Baltimore and Washington games, how does that affect the matchups, do you feel like?
Well, I mean, I did go to the Game 5 of the National Series.
Oh, no!
That did not go well for Washington.
Oh, my God!
Yeah.
Uh-oh. People may try to kidnap you to keep you away from that Redskins game now.
My flight may get canceled, my hotel may get canceled, but...
So wait a second. So if you're at that Redskins game and it turns out they're up 27-10 and then they blow the game in the most agonizing fashion, you're patient X.
Yeah, pretty much. I have to hide in the press box until everyone leaves. It's not going to be pretty.
So is it the same day or Baltimore's Saturday and Washington Sunday?
Oh, no, they're both the same day. I'm going to have to go from Baltimore to Washington. And I think Washington famously has the worst traffic for getting to a game of anywhere in the country. So it'll be interesting. I might have to leave the Ravens game a little early so they can both happen.
That is going to be interesting. Maybe you have to leave the Ravens game like at the end of the third quarter and then listen to the fourth on the radio.
I'm hoping that jumping Joe Flacco has led the Ravens to a blowout win by the middle of the third quarter so I can leave early without having repercussions. And I'll just miss the Andrew Luck backdoor cover as opposed to the Andrew Luck leading the Colts back to a victory.
Yeah, so let's sketch this out. So Baltimore goes up like 30-7. You take off third quarter. Luck comes charging back for the 30-24 cover as you're in the car. Then you arrive at whatever RFK Stadium's called now. And you're there in tight. What is it, like an hour between games?
If even. I feel like it can't be that long.
Hey, if there's any wealthy BS Report listeners out there who are taking a helicopter from the Baltimore to Washington game, let us know.
That's a good idea.
We'll sneak Barnwell on the helicopter. Yeah. Maybe Obama. If Obama's sending both, Obama. If you want to get Barnwell on the helicopter, the Air Force One helicopter, let us know. Barnwell's available. He's available for a copter trip.
I'm available for any helicopter rides in general. I feel like I don't ride a helicopter enough, not only in Washington but elsewhere.
How's your first winter been back in Boston?
Oh, like last week I was just shoveling out my car, and I was just thinking, why on earth did I do this again? You don't shovel out your car in Vegas very frequently.
No, listen. You go from East Coast to warm weather back to the East Coast, and it's just kind of startling the entire time.
It really is.
Yeah. But at least you ruined the Celtics.
At least I ruined the Celtics.
I blame you for that, too. You ruined the Celtics. You probably ruined the Patriots.
I will say this, Bill Simmons. I got to Boston. I got to Northeastern University in 2001. And what happened in 2001?
Oh, wow. A lot of titles.
Every single sports team in Boston won a title.
A lot of titles
after
after that.
Paying me to stay in Boston, let alone blame me for living here.
Hey, here's a Vegas bet for you. The Celtics are 10-1 to win the Atlantic right now. They're only 6 games. 6 games behind the Knicks. They've had a much tougher schedule. The Knicks are going to have Raymond Felton out for a few games. They have Amari coming in to screw them up. They have a bunch of old guys who might get hurt. Celtics have Avery Bradley coming back today. I don't believe this. I just want to talk about it because it makes me feel good because I've been so bitter about the Celtics season. But Avery Bradley comes back. Maybe Fab Melo catches fire.
Well, is Fab Melo catching fire while he's concussed or afterwards?
After the concussion.
After the concussion.
We cut it to 3 by the All-Star break. It's a pretty good bet, 10-1. Like the 10-1.
Are the Celtics not going to start floating all their veteran players in the trade market again?
Well, there's 2 things that will happen. One is the players will be floating in the trade market, and 2, I'm going to snap and write my annual column where I kill the Celtics because that's part of the process. I have to write that column and then they take off. So they have to lose by 20 at home. I'll snap. I'll write some column killing Rondo. Rondo will be the target this year.
Oh, not Danny Ainge this year? That's nice.
No, it'll be Rondo this year. Hey, Rondo, you told us this was your team now, and you're having your worst season in 3 years. So where are you? Could you show up for the season, please? So, yeah, he'll be – he's in my sights.
What if Ray Allen was the Rondo whisperer all along and nobody realized it?
Oh, God. Didn't even think of that. Well, Jason Terry is certainly something. He's not a whisperer. When you're playing 34 minutes a game and you're averaging 11 points and you're also the worst defensive player in the league at your position and you're shooting under 40%, that's a problem. Those are some issues. All right, so what else do you have this week on Grantland?
Shea went up with a Black Monday review of all the firings.
I read that. It was a detailed review. I agree with you on the Andy Reid. It is very telling that the only person who has multiple teams going after him is Andy Reid. Nobody's like, there's no Chan Gailey sweepstakes right now.
Right.
There's no Norv Turner, 7 teams pursuing him, but yet Andy Reid, we already know, has 2 teams coming after him.
Right. If Andy Reid was named Andy Jones and he had pulled up his resume with the Chargers as opposed to the Eagles would be desperate to hire him, and all the Eagles fans would want to hire him. He would be the best coach on the market by a wide margin. And he is. I mean, there's just no one out there who has, his level of experience, his success in the past, and
With that said, though,
he has some major red flags raised, of course.
No, it was time for him to leave, though. I actually feel the same about Romo. I think you can pass the point of no return, whether you're a coach in a city or a player in a city, where once the fans and the media, you almost become a bigger storyline than whatever's happening that season, then it's time to leave.
Makes sense, and I think it was time for Reid to go for sure. But what do you do with Romo? I mean, if you're the Chiefs, for example, wouldn't you want to trade the first overall pick for Tony Romo?
You would trade the first overall pick for Tony Romo?
Of course you would.
Wow!
Who would you rather have? This is a terrible draft. You're going to be drafting what? A defensive tackle from Utah as opposed to Tony Romo? Of course you'd make that trade. You make it in 2 seconds.
I think like 10,000 Cowboys fans just drove into the highway divider listening to that trade. They got so excited. They just blacked out. They didn't know what happened.
Who was the Cowboys quarterback before Tony Romo? Drew Bledsoe? And before him, Quincy Carter and Chad Hutchinson?
You're preaching the choir. If they could get the first pick in the draft for Tony Romo, I would do that in a millisecond, and then I would trade my second pick for Matt Flynn.
You want to believe in Matt Flynn, huh?
Why not?
I don't know. Matt Flynn is like Matt Castle Redux. He played in the greatest offense in the league. He put up great numbers and with an elite supporting cast around him, and then couldn't even beat out a rookie who I'd been a very good rookie, but couldn't beat out a rookie. With the general manager wanting him to win, from day one since Seattle, which is kind of scary.
Matt Flynn made the mistake of going against the Messiah, Russell Wilson. That's not his fault. He might be the 12th best quarterback in the league for all we know. He's just, when you're going against somebody who hovers above his teammates in the huddle, it's tough to battle against. He's a halo. He's Russell Wilson, there's a dying dog on the road and he touches it and the dog jumps up and he scampers off. That's what Russell Wilson does. The Chiefs. I don't know. I think the Chiefs fans. The more you think about it, the
more it kind of appeals to you, I think.
I think I'd need to get Dallas a second.
That's
or here's the move for the Chiefs. You just take Clowney now and then you sue the league. And you team up with Clowney and you sue the league for about how the age limit is unfair or whatever reason that he's not eligible. You just take them on legally. You say, you know what? That's our pick.
Videos?
Yeah, you're like, hey Goodell, are you up for another legal saga? Because we're about to give you one. We're taking Clowney. He's the best player in the draft, and we're taking him. We don't care if he's eligible. That's what I would do.
I picture Clowney just hitting things, and then just sending videos of Clowney just attacking things to Goodell.
Well, this is why we need a sports czar, and this is going to be part of my sports czar campaign when I finally put it all together. There needs to be a committee for all the drafts. And, if it's like say LeBron comes out of high school again, and it's just clear he shouldn't go to college, the committee, who the president and all the sports leagues should trust, should have the power to say, you know what, this guy's coming in now. It's stupid for him to be in college. It's ridiculous. He could get hurt. He'd be the best prospect this year. Clowney should be in the draft.
Of course he should.
It's stupid.
He's basically stuck playing for free when he could be making, $22 million, I think is the guarantee for the first overall pick?
Yeah, and what's the argument? Because he's so young, he's not physically ready? This guy is physically ready to freaking go into Afghanistan and find Al-Qaeda terrorists. This guy's, we've never seen anything like this guy.
I'm pretty sure he's actually in Zero Dark 30, which is strange. Not built.
They CGI'd him in.
Really impressive. He's beautiful and everything. But look at Marcus Lattimore, who was, South Carolina halfback who,
great example.
Tore up his knee in grotesque fashion twice in 3 years for no money. I mean,
yes.
It's just, I can't fathom that being logical or reasonable.
I don't like it. I can't fathom college sports being logical and reasonable. My buddy Bish was here yesterday, who was one of my oldest friends, and huge college football guy, and we're watching the Rose Bowl, and I'm like, they show the records, and Wisconsin's 8-5, and I'm like, why is Wisconsin in the Rose Bowl? They're 8-5, and he's like, well, the top 2 teams were ineligible, and then they beat the number 3 team in the championship, so here they are. It's like, oh, that's a great system. So, hey everybody, here's your 4th best team in the Big Ten. They fall to 8-6. Stanford barely beats them. It's just stupid. And then all these the conference jumping and all this stuff and like what's happened in the college sports is awful. I can't believe people follow it.
I just think you're upset because Northern Illinois didn't cover last night.
Oh, I was very upset. That was one of those you're watching the game and you know within 2 series. You're like, oh, that team's much faster than the other team. And I have the team that's really super slow. This is going to be trouble.
I was just upset because a team that was called the Huskies wearing black and red was on national TV, and it wasn't Northeastern. That really upset me.
Someday. Well, the good news is that it's not officially a new year until I lose money on a bowl game when I don't follow college football. So now we're off. Now we can really get into 2013. Bill Barnwell, keep cranking it. We'll let you know if we have any helicopter offers for you for this weekend.
Please, helicopters anywhere, anytime.
All right, we'll talk to you.
So I get to sign off. Whoa!
Thank you for downloading the BS Report with Bill Simmons.
Too much fun.
Check out more podcasts at the iTunes Music Store or at Pod Center at ESPNradio.com.
Peace out.